Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and today is going to be a solo episode. And it's a topic that comes up a lot. I see it come up with the leaders that I coach. I hear it come up in my conversations, whether that be conversations with friends, family, and even my kids. We were talking about this the other day. And today's topic is really about finding happiness within yourself. So here's something I notice, and I'm not immune from this either. I catch myself getting into this pattern at times as well. But we can be in this pattern of, I'll be happy when. So the I'll be happy when syndrome, I'm going to call it, or the I'll be happy when illusion. And so what happens with this is there's this belief that when I get the job, when I have a loving and caring partner, when I have more money in the bank, when I lose that last 10 pounds, when I have a more toned body, when I get the promotion, when I start the business, and it goes on and on and on. But there's this belief that once I get this thing, once I achieve this outcome, once I have this person in my life, then I'll be happy. And I'm sure you've had this experience before when you do achieve the thing that you believe is going to give you happiness. And maybe you do feel a little bit happy for an hour, a couple of hours a day, even a couple of days. But then you return to the set points. And the reason why you will never have happiness come from any of those things is because you are looking for something external to give you that sense of happiness, that sense of contentment, that sense of bliss. Here's the good news. The good news is happiness, bliss, contentment is available to you 24/7. But a lot of time we are searching, we are looking in the wrong place. So, whether that's the messaging that we get around if we achieve these things, then we're going to have happiness. Or the other thing that I see a lot of is we are bombarded by messages in culture about us not being enough. And of course, there's $1 billion, I would say even $1 trillion industry that plays off of those insecurities and gets you on this hamster wheel that you are never going to get off of because there's always something else that you will need in order to be enough. Right. So the advertising will tell us, especially for women, you need to look, you can't age, you need to look younger, less wrinkles. So if you just have this wonderful skincare product, this wonderful skincare routine, then you'll be okay, then you'll be enough. But guess what? Once you have the skincare routine, then it's going to be around, well, you also need to look a certain way. You need to have a certain level of fitness. You need to be toned. And so all of these things are reminding you, telling you, and when I say remind you, because it's not actually true, but it's this illusion that is giving you this narrative around you need to have these things to be enough. And I could tell you, I experience this sometimes as an entrepreneur, right? Like it's in everything. You can't escape it, right? So as an entrepreneur, there's also a multi-billion-dollar sales and marketing industry that's telling you all of these things you need to be a successful entrepreneur. So that can look like I need all of these systems, I need all of these products, I need all of this support in order to be a successful entrepreneur. I need to have a certain number of likes on my social media posts. I need to have a certain number of downloads of my podcast. You see where I'm going here. There's always going to be something that I could be searching for or looking outside of me in order to feel happy. And we can also bring happiness. We can combine success with this as well, right? For me to feel like a happy, fulfilled, successful entrepreneur, I need to achieve these things. I need to have these vanity metrics in order to be happy. But it's not true. And I see this and I hear this all the time when I'm even talking to leaders about things that go on in corporate as well. And so sometimes it's now about external. And if certain things change, then they could be happy. If they could work with a different boss, or if they could have different colleagues, if they could have a different culture. Now, what I'm not saying here that those things are not important things to evaluate, right? So if you're noticing you're working with an organization that doesn't feel very fulfilling, where it doesn't feel like a sense of it's connected with your values, that you don't appreciate the way the culture is operating, where there is a disconnect. So the organization is saying they're proponent around a certain type of values and the type of mission and vision and what they're about, but then you notice the behaviors that are happening in that organization are not aligned. So that doesn't feel good for you. Great. Those are times where you might want to make a choice that this isn't the right organization for me. This is not where I want to stay long term. But still, it doesn't mean that, well, until I'm at another organization, until I'm at another culture, I can't be happy. Because then you're falling into the illusion again. The illusion being that it's something that needs to happen and shift externally in order for you to be happy. And again, there's times that I fall into this trap, I fall into this loop. The more that you can be paying attention, the more you can become aware of your thinking, your thoughts, your narrative, the more you can unhook from that story. Because if you're always looking for things to have to look a certain way externally to be happy, then you can see that you are always going to be in this situation where all sorts of things are going to happen that are out of your control. You can't control how other people are going to behave. I see this again with partners as well, right? So people, if I just had the partner who showed up for me, if I just had the partner that showed up with being able to honor my needs, and where we had the emotional intimacy, where we had these really, really great conversations and a great relationship, you might realize that the partner you're with is not the partner you want to be with long term, but you can't equate your happiness with that partner. So you might decide, okay, eventually this isn't going to be the right relationship for me, the right partnership for me. I know what I'm looking for in the future. But you can see how there starts to be a codependency if you cannot be happy unless your partner behaves in a certain way. Or you cannot be happy unless your children behave in a certain way. Or you cannot be happy if your family, unless they operate in a certain way. You can definitely have strong boundaries and decide what you will and will not tolerate and who gets to be part of your circle. But your happiness, that is always available. It is with you 24/7, and that really comes from within. And so, how do you tune into that joy and that bliss that is always there, always available to you? Well, a big part of it is pulling yourself out of the illusion, noticing when you're getting into these thoughts around, I need all of these things to change externally for me to be happy. As soon as you notice yourself having that story, that's where you pause. And then you ask yourself, well, is that really true? Do I need other people to change? Or do I need to have these things externally, right? Oh my gosh, you go onto social media, you go onto Instagram. It's so easily to get pulled into this world of celebrity culture and these beautiful dream vacations. And so is it true that unless you go on the luxury vacation that you can't be happy? Unless you have this certain object, whatever the object may be, for all of us, it's going to be different. But once you get that object, will you then be happy? Now, for sure, these objects can be fun. So I posted earlier this week, I got a new pair of pink high heels, pink pumps. I love them. I have a speaking engagement, I have a dress, and I think these pink pumps are going to pop with the dress. It was bringing me a lot of joy. I looked at these shoes and I'm still looking at them and I can't wait to put the whole outfit together. And it did. It made me happy. It brought me joy. But it's not that if I didn't have these shoes, I would be lacking in joy. It's just kind of like it's the cherry on top. It's just an additional fun, joyful thing. But I don't wait for those. If I didn't have those pink heels, I wouldn't feel unhappy. And so the opportunity for you is to notice those times and those moments where you catch yourself going into that loop, going into that story. And then what can you do to bring yourself back to the truth? What are some of those practices and tools that'll help to keep you grounded and centered and remind you and allow you to feel where the happiness really comes from? Because it comes from within. It comes from a feeling of contentment, of just being alive, of being here on this earth, of being able to wake up every morning. So, even tuning into gratitude, to be grateful to be alive, to be breathing, to be connecting with the humans around you, to have a roof over your house, a roof over your head, for your health, for all these things. When you slow down and get quiet and tune in internally, you recognize that's where I find my peace, my calm, my joy. And so there are going to be moments where you feel like you're not connected. You just notice that your mood is feeling like I'm not enough. And I'm here to remind you that there is nothing that you have to attain. You are already whole, enough, worthy, and complete. When you start to recognize the voices telling you that you're not, this is when you can do some things to bring yourself back to your truth. And here are some potential tools. They're going to look different for everyone. You might find some work well for you, some don't, depending on the day. But you can do things like journaling, taking some deep breaths, some deep cleansing breaths, just taking 30 seconds to a minute to bring yourself back to the present moments. So doing some mindfulness and meditation practices. So that's where you're noticing when you're going into the past or when you're going into the future. So ruminating about the past or going into the future and feeling anxiety, well, you're not going to feel a lot of joy there because you're not here right now. So how can you bring yourself back into the present moment? By using mindfulness tools. You can go for a walk in nature. You can listen to some grounding, soul-filling music, whatever that music is for you. Taking a bath, listening to a book, So I have a lot of clients who like to do audiobooks as opposed to reading. So listening or reading a book that's uplifting, that reminds you the truth, brings you back to your source, to the reality that there's nothing you need to do. You are already whole and worthy now. Listening to a podcast, like hopefully you're listening to this podcast right now, and doing yoga, but really different things that can return you to your center, to ground back to the present moments, so that you're not in this illusionary story that something needs to happen out there in order for you to be happy. And this doesn't mean that you're not going after goals, that you're not achieving things that you're supposed to. I think sometimes people misinterpret mindfulness and meditation, that you're supposed to now become a monk and let go of all of your things and become a minimalist, and that's where you will find joy. There's not one version of joy. It looks different for each of us. You've heard me talk about this before on the show when it comes to success. There's this belief that success is this one all-encompassing definition, but it's not. For each of us, that definition looks is different. I would say a lot of us, the success is ultimately freedom. Because even if success for you is a certain amount of money in your bank, well, what does that money give you? The money gives you freedom to make choices that are aligned with what matters most to you. But you can continue to go after those goals. Absolutely. It is when you're in that inspired action and you're working towards meaningful goals that matter to you, because it's not about actually achieving the goal. It's who you're becoming as you continue to work through those goals, as you stretch yourself, as you hit your edges. I've talked to you about this in previous podcast episodes, so I'm not going to talk a lot about that today. But it's about not delaying your happiness until your goals are achieved. It's not delaying your happiness until things change externally. But it's about returning to the truth that happiness is always available to you. You just forget. Your mind is going constantly 60, the research shows 50 to 60,000 thoughts a day. Lots of thoughts. And many of the thoughts are the same recycled thoughts you're having over and over and over again. So this is where you want to pull yourself out of those thoughts that are no longer serving you and create new thoughts, create new narratives, create new stories that remind you, oh, I'm confused for a second. I'm thinking those people outside there all need to change and do something differently. Oh my gosh, I'm giving my power away. No, they don't create my happiness. I create my happiness. You create your happiness, and it's always available to you. One last thing I'll say to you around social media. I love social media. I sometimes say I have a love-hate relationship because there's wonderful things that come with it. I can be incredibly inspired. I've made so many wonderful connections over the years. A lot of business comes from the work that I do on social media. So it has been really, really fruitful and abundant for me. And it can also be very damaging and destructive if not used in the right way. So when I notice that I might be in a certain energy where, maybe I'm already having a hard day, I'm not really in that inspired action, those are moments where I just realize social media and scrolling is not the place that I want to be. That is just reinforcing messaging that's not accurate, that might make me feel through seeing this stuff again. I mean, celebrities are such a great example, right? If you go and see a celebrity in their everyday life, it's not what you see on the red carpet. That is all an illusion. We've got this beautiful makeup, these outfits that they spend hours getting people dressed in. So it's the perfect dress that fits perfectly. You've got all of these artists working on you. And it's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that it's fun to get dressed up sometimes, but that's not what their everyday life looks like. And so too many times people go on social media and start using that as points of comparison. That's not real. That's the highlight reel. That's the highlight reel. And especially for any woman listening, you are going to be hearing messaging. It's like you look okay until you're about 35. And then once you get into your 40s, it's like you're done. You have to try to do everything you can to continue to look younger. It's not true. It's all a facade. It's an illusion. Again, there's nothing wrong with using skincare products if that makes you feel good and you're taking care of yourself, but make sure it's coming from a wanting to take care of you, not from a place of I'm not enough. I am not worthy. I need to be and do and get to this certain place in order for me to earn that worth. It's not true. I hope that this episode has been helpful for you, gets you thinking about the ways that you can really, really tune into happiness, and reminding you that it's not something that comes externally, it's something that comes from within you. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with others, and love your reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Helps to get the show in front of a wider audience. And if you're looking to develop more confident, emotionally intelligent leaders, I would love to have a conversation around the different ways I can work with you with one-on-one coaching, transformational keynotes, and ongoing leadership training. Wherever you are in the world, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sending tons of love. Bye-bye.